You're listening to the Barn Church Podcast.
It's been a couple of weeks, but I'm going to tell you it's so good to be back. We got a brand new series coming up next. Taste and see. Guys, taste and see that the Lord is good. Really, this entire new series is about the new wine that God is pouring out on the earth today. It is something that is requiring us to change and shift our paradigms from the old way of doing things. Listen, the old wine, it's still around, but it doesn't mean that there's not place for the new wine to take root. Listen in. Kara explains it all today. Stay tuned because the TBC Sermon Podcast starts right now.
Well, welcome back, everybody. It's the Barn Church Podcast. It's been 2 weeks.
It's been 2 weeks. That's 2 weeks too long.
Well, you know, a lot of the stuff we did in the past couple of weeks really didn't translate to a podcast pretty well. I'm sure we probably have summed it up a little bit.
Probably.
But so something cool has come out of that. The Lord had led our staff, which Kara and I are definitely on staff. And my wife is in the room. She's a silent partner today. She will not have a microphone because if she did, she'd probably end up saying like absolutely nothing because she doesn't like to be on the microphone. She won't today,
but she will one day. And she's amazing.
Like I'm an idiot.
Wait till you guys hear from her. She's amazing.
She's got a lot of wisdom.
That's true.
No, we felt the Lord tell us it was time to take some days of pause. And so we have not really done a whole lot of administration here. Not that we think that there is a great need or even like a real sense of that we're over administrating. There's still a lot of stuff. It takes a lot of things, a lot of moving parts to run a ministry.
It does. More than people realize.
But what we've embraced is the ideology that how do churches that are in the midst of revival, how are they able to successfully empower volunteers and move forward?
Because they still have to do that.
Correct. You still got to train them. You still got to do certain things. You still got to get them connected. Mm-hmm. But when you're in the midst of revival, let's say it's happening 24/7, there's not really a whole lot of stuff you're going to be able to really just dedicate 3 hours to, you know?
Correct.
So he wanted us to kind of embrace that paradigm shift.
He did.
And so that's what we're in the midst of. I think we've only been at the office, one day this week?
One day this week, none last week.
Right. And one day next week.
Yep.
And then after that, we are having an entire week off for Thanksgiving. And then we will be back at it. But it might look different. Whether it's going to look different in December or come the new year.
Right.
It's going to look different. We don't know exactly what it's going to look like, but we are embracing something new, a new wine for even us.
Right. It's true. Good tie in there, Jared.
It's called a segue.
It's called a segue. It's so good. But it's true because it's so out of our comfort zone. 10 days of pause, 10 working days of pause. We still have services on the weekend. But to connect with our staff and you know, God had said in the beginning, this is a return to family. And if you become too business, you'll lose the family element and then you'll just be like every other business organization out there. And we won't allow that because our heart's desire is just to be in God's perfect will and do what he's calling us to do. So when he tells us to put the brakes on or put the gas on or do something different, because we're always seeking him, or I think I said that in the message on Sunday, we're always seeking him to make sure we're on the right track. We don't just take a vision and run with it. We take a vision and check back in.
And I believe we've been given the grace to establish a good amount of processes.
Yeah.
And in doing that, we've learned immeasurably more than we would have done if we had not engaged in that.
That's correct.
And we learned what has worked, what has not worked. Business churches, or I would say business-focused churches, not that there are a plethora of those in our area, but there are churches in the area that engage more into the business side of it, like you're an employee, you're not family.
Right.
I know that, you know, churches operate like that. I've been to churches that do operate like that. And, you know, some people are perfectly fine in that type of environment. listen, there's a cup of tea for everybody. And we understand that we may not be everyone's cup of tea, even though we believe that the Lord is drawing people into this congregation, into this ecclesia, into this community, into this family, to break off old paradigms and old thought patterns in order for them to embrace the newness of what he is doing. Now, we don't boast that we have some type of new revelation, right? We're not boasting that way.
Correct.
But we are saying that there is a perfective revelation of what he has already established, and he is bringing new understanding. And so when we talk about new wine, when we talk about taste and see, there are things that God is helping us understand. It might be a revelation to us based off of previous stuff. It's not a new revelation. We do truly believe that everything that has been given to us is manifold wisdom upon manifold wisdom. It's him building upon the paradigms that have already existed and shifting our thought patterns. I mean, things that we may have held true to for 45 years. God may give us one word and go, that's what that means.
That's what that means.
The last 45 years totally make more sense now in the light of that new information.
Right.
Or the manifold wisdom.
Because he's always revealing more wisdom too. If you seek it, you will find it. If you seek his wisdom, you're going to find his wisdom. He's always wanting to reveal more to you. You know, and a lot of us, I mean, me included, would love for him to reveal everything at once, but he knows that our capacity isn't there to handle that. So
not going to happen.
What's new to us is, I don't know that it's really new. What he said in the very beginning was, think New Testament church. I'm doing something new. It's really a return to the old.
Right.
Think New Testament church. And now he's more recently said, think garden. So it's really, I think, a combination of this New Testament church where they were in their homes daily, spending time together, but still had larger gatherings.
Yes.
And then it's this, I lost my train of thought. Doesn't matter. But
no, you were referencing New Testament church, referencing like local ecclesias and household ecclesias. Right. That it's not different. They're one and the same.
They're one and the same. And then the return to the garden is, how were things prior to the fall? Because really, we can live there now. We just have to have that mindset. So the new wine is really a return to the old, but it's new for us because none of us have ever lived in it. We don't have the frame of reference on what that really looks like. And you have to allow yourself to be broken and crushed and allow the Lord to reveal himself in those times to change what he needs to change inside of your heart so that you can become the new that he wants you to be for the season going forward for revival.
Right. And we have to guard ourselves against being frustratingly frustrated with the things that are changing, because we have developed patterns, we have developed habits that we will have to shift.
Right. And just because something worked 10 or 20 years ago doesn't mean it's going to work today. We want to reach the next generation. You know, years ago, I had somebody tell me, and this person was 89 years old at the time, and they said, well, it worked great when I was 8 years old, and it'll work fine for 8 years old today. And she was a person that went to a church that had 12 people in it, and the youngest was 65 years old. There was no kids, no youth, no college age, no families in it. So it's not the message of the gospel that changes, but it certainly is the method that changes, because every generation learns and speaks a different language. So we have to adjust our language, but not the message to reach them, or we'll end up with 12 people that are 65 and older.
I'm almost positive that if the disciples walked into the churches of America or any other church across the entire world today, they would not know that it was a church.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Now, I mean, hopefully the presence of the Lord meets them at the door, right? That's what our desire is. But we have shifted with the culture based on how the culture has dictated how things should shift.
Right. The seeker-sensitive, the sinner-friendly models have allowed culture to influence them instead of them influencing the culture. And so you have these places of worship that, you know, have a time limit on worship, and they have a time limit on the word because they don't want to inconvenience anybody too much so that they miss the football game that's on Sunday after church. They want to get them in and out like cattle, so that they can go on about their life. But their life is never ultimately really changed because they're not fully encountering the love of Jesus. They might get saved, but are they going deeper? Are they finding out who they are in Christ? Are they finding out what their anointing is, what their gifting is, what their purpose in life is? Because that's what the apostles and disciples were doing.
Yes. And I think I understand now. I asked this question like in my head like years ago. Why am I starting to see churches move away from calling them services? And I think I understand that more now than I ever did, because what I've seen, what I've typically heard is that we are offering a service for the people, and they expect it to be XYZ from this time to this time. If there's 2 to 3 services on the weekend, you're getting the same flavor, different times. I know people will be like, you don't understand what happened in the first service. No, I was in the third service, and people that probably experienced something different in the second. And I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with multiple services throughout the particular day that you choose to worship the Lord on. But I just know that from our perspective, from here, it starts building different ecclesias and different communities within the church. And then you have all of these people like, oh, you go to that church? Well, I didn't know that. Well, because you're not in community with one another. You are simply just visiting the same establishment on a specific particular day and going to a different service, and you're not engaging in the culture of the community within that particular body or denominational parish, whatever it might be. So what I've experienced is those churches that are really presence driven, they've stopped calling them services for the most part. And they're calling them like encounters, or experience. I like encounter a lot better than I like experience, because it really is. That's one of the things that we stay here all the time is we create environments for people to encounter Christ and to be empowered to advance the kingdom, right?
That's correct.
That's the overarching vision of Friday Night Light Ministries, which the Barn is a part of, as the local outreach arm for the community. Yep. That is something that we are engaging in even on Sunday mornings. Yep. And so what I've started to see is this return to the old, right? It's new, but it's a return to the old. But we're starting to see it like in various different capacities. So what the Lord has shifted for our knowledge and for us is that it is now, He wants us to go a little further in that. This returning is turning our paradigm, our minds, our way of thinking to back to the way He really designed it to be. Now, I've heard it stated that there's no way the church will ever return back to the second chapter of Acts church or the Acts 2 church.
Really?
I've heard it stated. Huh. And I'm like, well, you can. You can go back. It just doesn't fit within your model right now.
Correct.
And that's what we're fighting against
That's what we're fighting against is the model of church in America. Because the model of church in other countries, especially like third world countries, is not this 1 hour, 15 minutes in and out, kind of check it off my list kind of thing. And what the new wine requires is a crucifying of your flesh and a dying to self and letting the Lord literally take over the service. So, you have to, in that crucifying your flesh, you have to crucify that fear of man that, oh my gosh, people might think we're weird if we just let Holy Spirit go crazy, or somebody hollers, or somebody jumps up and down, or somebody runs around the sanctuary, or whatever. I mean, God is a God of order, but He also is a God of freedom. And this putting Him in a box thing is just not allowing people that full-on experience or full-on encounter. And it's in that encounter, in that moment of encounter where you experience His love, that your identity is firmly planted. Right? You this light bulb comes on. Oh, I am a child of God. He really does love me. And you can't ever escape that encounter. So that new wine is, I'm laying myself down because I want the Lord to reign. I want Him to do what He wants to do. Here's what I think we should do, but let's lay ourselves down every single day. Let's do what would He do? He would spend time with people. He would not be in the office every day. He would not be so stuck on business model. He'd say, these people are sick and hurting. Let's go feed them. Or let me go hang out with he spent every day with His disciples for 3.5 years. And then they spent every day with the people that they raised up and they pooled all of their resources and they all went together on it. And they all had to lay their lives down for the cause of Christ.
less doing, more being.
Correct.
And when you are who God has called you to be, you will inevitably do things in line with that call.
Which is where the faith without works is dead comes from.
Correct.
Because your faith, your encounter with Jesus, that encounter with community makes you want to do the works. Some have it opposite, but it's really your faith that makes you want to do good things for other people and to lay yourself down, which is
necessary.
hard.
It is hard. Oh my gosh.
I know one of my points the other day was, we're not in a time where we can recover anymore from loose lips, is like I like to call it, and I don't mean gossip. You cannot run your mouth. You cannot run your mouth and just be spewing anything out into the atmosphere, because the kingdoms are beginning to collide. There is a war happening in the heavenlies, and it's not going to be escapable. It's happening, and we don't have time to recover from just running our mouth or whatever it happens to be. Every word out of your mouth has power, and I don't know why that is still such a topic for people, but like they get it, but they don't get it, because they'll speak it, but then out of their mouth comes whatever, and the over criticalness and the over bitterness and all of that being offendable, it's all got to go away. You got to crucify your flesh and lay your life down for the cause of Christ, which is what he did for us. And he stressed him out so much, he sweat blood. None of us have that much stress.
I don't.
Me either.
I got a lot of stress. I ain't got that type of stress. I got different type of stress.
Right.
Not that type of stress. I don't want blood dripping from my head stress. No. I don't think anybody would willingly want that. I mean, unless they really are dawning on the, whole spirit of what God was doing in that moment through Jesus. I mean, it was absolutely crazy to think about. But you're absolutely right. Our mouths have prevented moves of the Lord.
Yep.
Because it didn't line up with our current understanding.
Correct.
That is destructive.
Yes, it is.
What it allows is the enemy to then hedge you in.
Yep.
And create in that particular spot, in that place, bastions of thought and pattern that are immovable.
Yep. That's correct. And that's not new wine.
That's not new wine. That is rehearsed rhetoric for everyday people.
Right.
It's just, this is what we want to expect on this, that. He came to bring us life and life more abundantly.
Right.
There are no qualifications that he does around that.
Correct.
When you seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, everything else will be added unto you. And if you look in those verses previous, it's very clear. So these are things, and as my wife and I are engaging in some very tough moments, spiritually, financially,
all the things.
I mean, all the things. And I know you and your husband, Shane, are going through very similar things still. And so we have linked arms, understanding, like my wife and I, we're linking arms. We're not fighting with each other, but we've linked arms, understanding that this is the season that we've been called to embrace. And so if we can apply in the micro what the Lord wants us to apply in the macro, what you're stating as dying to yourself is such a necessity for us to do and shift into the new paradigm that the Lord is bringing, for us to taste and see that what he is doing today is valid
and good,
and proper and time.
And there's a war. I shared that. There's a war at the door. 5784 is the war, the year of the door. There is a war at that door. You want to look back because everything made sense in the old way of how everything was done. It all made sense. It all worked like clockwork, like a well-oiled machine. Church is not supposed to be a well-oiled machine. And it is in that, I don't even know that families are supposed to be well-oiled machines. God, I don't think is a well-oiled machine. It's in that threshold to the new door that we have the keys to. He's given us the keys. Isaiah 22:22. He's given us the keys, but they're just sitting in our pockets because there's a war at the door, and you just, to get to the new, you have to press through. You can't just hold on to the key. You got to put it in the lock and unlock it. You got to open the door. You got to press through, which means laying yourself down again and again and again. And I think the church in America has not really shared the gospel in that way. You know, Jesus is your get out of hell free card, and he's great. And he laid his life down. And so did all of the disciples and apostles. Every one of them was crucified, except for maybe John, who maybe died in a prison on the island.
Maybe.
We don't know that for sure. Nobody knows. Somebody knows that. But, you know, it wasn't this easy walk. When they signed up, that's why when an Islamic person, you know, accepts Christ, they understand what a serious decision it is. They understand that they have to lay because their life is literally in danger. But here in America, our life isn't in danger. We don't even know the word sacrifice.
Barely. And
it's like a bad word. It's like the F word.
If you really want to tick off I'd say a Pharisaical or a legalistic Christian, just mention sacrifice to them and see how much they squirm.
Right.
It's a very uncomfortable word, even for those of us who are really dedicated to the purposes of the Lord, because it still means that there's always something we can sacrifice. Always something we can sacrifice.
Yeah.
The matter isn't that do we have, it's the matter of what will we be willing to do. Mm-hmm. And, you know, I mean, we look at examples in Scripture. We look at, you know, Isaac being sacrificed.
Right.
You know, the very real possibility that Abraham was going to bring the hammer or the knife, right? And at the very last possible second, it's like, oh, because you wouldn't withhold your only son from me, you know, this is what I'm going to do, right? So we know that there's promises.
That was not an easy walk up that mountain.
Especially he had the dude was carrying his own firewood for I mean, come on now.
It wasn't like rainbows and cupcakes. Let's go up the mountain.
It was a type and a shadow. It was a Christophany in the Old Testament, because Christ then in the New carried his own method of his demise.
He did.
But what God did not finish in the Old, he finished in the New.
Correct.
And so I think that's wow,
good.
That was good.
That was good. Because what he started in the old churches in America, he's going to finish in the new.
And that's what he wants us to do.
Wow. Our minds are blown.
Yeah, that just happened.
Praise God. Holy, I love it when he downs. Don't you love that, Michelle? You can nod your head. Sure do. Oh, look her.
You heard her a little bit.
She's on the microphone.
Hopefully the gate didn't pop off too quickly on that one. Otherwise, you're just going to hear. So anyway.
I heard it.
There's a microphone gate. So it
I don't even know what that is.
Quietest moments. Because we, you know, sometimes we have children that'll run through here screaming their heads off, or other people that just, you know, will talk right outside the door or the window. Right. You know, we do, you know, work and have a very vibrant community here.
We do. And we love having the kids here. Like, we're supposed to be family, right?
Sometimes the gates are needed, right?
Sometimes we have to put gates on the microphones, but it's okay because people can bring their kids here. Yep. A couple of people bring their dogs here. We're a family. We're supposed to do life together. We're supposed to be family. We're not employee, boss, and all that garb. We're just family. We're trying to do what the Lord said to do, how he said to do it. And it's awesome. It's a blessing. It's a great blessing. Awesome.
And that's one of the things that God is doing in this new wine.
Right.
He's bringing family back to the church in a more powerful way. It's okay. I want to make sure we understand this, because I know we've said it. We talk about it. Father, family, unity. We want people to know Father like never before, to bring true family back to the church, and for there to be true unity amongst the body. So I think when people hear us say bring family back to the church, I think they've heard us indicate that it's not happening anywhere. That's not what we're saying.
That's not what we're saying.
What we're saying is there is a model for family in the inner workings and the outer workings of the church that should have never been removed.
Correct.
And so the true family isn't like, oh, you can bring your kids here. Is that part of true family? Yes, it's an aspect. It's not
Correct.
The total picture.
Correct.
So, you know, I know we may have to explain that a little bit better, but this is a perfect avenue to do that.
It is.
So,
and family, some people come from, everybody comes from all various backgrounds of family. And sometimes you say family at a church and they think it's going to be a perfect family.
Yay!
And everybody responds the right way all the time. And everybody's just perfect. And that's not family. Even the disciples fought amongst themselves. Even the disciples had disagreements with Jesus. Jesus had to tell Peter to get back from me, Satan. So we're a family. We love no matter what.
It is unconditional love. And I know that's a very tough thing for people to truly understand. But, unconditional love doesn't mean unconditional, just you can do whatever you want. There is a level of responsibility and expectation in a family culture.
That's correct. Oh, that's good.
That cannot be removed. Because in order for unconditional love to really be truly unconditional, there has to be obstacles that would challenge you to really engage in that.
And there has to be expectations on behavior. Like, we don't let our kids run out across a busy street. We don't let them.
Don't?
I don't. Y'all can do what you want, but I just would recommend against that. Just saying.
I don't know.
We don't expect them not to be potty trained when they're 7 or 8 or 9 or 10 years old. We have expectations for our children. We expect them to do their work. We expect them to do their chores because we know that one day they need to manage a household. So there are expectations on a church family too, on leadership and honor, and sometimes there's correction offered.
Wouldn't it be a little interesting if you're 10 years old still in diapers?
Yes.
That's disgusting.
Gross. Unless there's a special need there.
Unless there's a special need. For the regular, Jane Doe and Joe, whatever. John Doe. Thank you. I was like, Joe Doe? Whatever. That works too.
It does.
That just would not be a thing. And so, we accept all walks of life. We accept all journeys of all kinds in Christendom, right? We don't expect you to be on the same path that we're on. We just want you to join the path.
Join the path.
Join the journey and learn and experience and encounter the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords in a more profound way. Yep. There is a new thing that is happening. Yeah. And again, like you stated, it's really a return to the old.
It is. Because I want to talk about unity for a minute.
Go for it. Rock it out.
Jesus didn't create all these different denominations. So how do you tell if you're at an old wine church? Are they supporting the other local churches? Or are they competing with them? Because if they're competing with the other church and they're trying to gather all the people and they want to be the top and the biggest and the best, that's old wine. And you should run. Sorry.
And it's still a fight.
It is.
I'm going to tell you, it's still a fight for those of us who are engaged in trying to build a community of believers.
Yeah.
Because there is a need. We know that God wants to grow this place.
Yeah.
So what are we going to do? We're going to naturally invite people to join this place. Now, I had the opportunity of meeting a new couple, and I just asked them, say, hey, what brought you here? And they'd say, oh, this, that, and the other thing. And then they went on about how they were trying out some different churches. And I just knew the right response was, there are a lot of good churches in the area.
Right.
You're going to be able to find something here that's going to speak to your heart. And I, went and said, there's this church, there's that church, there's this church, there's that. And I said, well, of course, there is us too. If you decide to make us, if you come back and try us out again and make this your home, I'd love to have you. I'm sure there's a lot of places and opportunities for you to serve, but you got to go where the Lord is leading you. And that is the right response.
Yes, it is.
And I think churches are so like, well, you got to be here. Thanks for joining us. When can we expect you back? It's about getting them in and marking them as a number, not a person. I care more about what God is leading people to do, and I want them to hear the voice of the Lord for themselves, not that I'm supposed to just automatically grab everybody the scruff of their neck and say, you're going to be here whether you like it or not, because we can invite people in here that actually want to see the demise of this house.
Right. Or they may have a different assignment.
They may have a completely different assignment. They may not even be supposed to be in a church. It could be in a marketplace.
Which is fine. And these churches that want to hold on to people and all of that, it's old wine, you guys. It's old wine. Something I think we do really well, too, is when people do leave because they feel called to go to a different church or whatever, we honor them on the way out because we don't own people. And guess what? It always leaves a bridge for their return. And you know what happens? They return. It's amazing. So if you're at a place where they're very much about competition, that is old wine. If you're at a place that's not allowing, the presence of God to overwhelm, that is old wine. I'll be honest with you, when I am scheduled to preach, I'm like, okay, Lord, I do not have to preach today. You want to do something different today? You can do what you want to do. I do not have to preach. I'm willing to lay down this message because it's not about me. It's about what He wants. Our job is to bring people to the foot of the cross, to an encounter with Jesus. It's not about, I have to give this message or I have to sing this song or none of that's important because He can do more in a moment than anybody else could do.
So regardless of the fact that we may have series that the Lord lays on our heart, it's culminating to one inevitable conclusion, that you should be having an encounter as soon as you step foot into this house.
That's right.
Whether you step in on a Friday evening and it's a soaking session and you feel more empowered and engaged into a completely different aspect of His presence, or you come in on a Sunday where the Lord has led us to a more evangelistic point of view, but there's still an encounter that is happening. Healing signs and wonders are happening.
They are.
So what I'd like to, just pause it for a second is, if you are going to a church where that kind of stuff isn't happening on the regular,
right,
then maybe the Lord is starting to press on you that it's time to make a change.
Right.
And you shouldn't feel so wrong about going to a place where His presence is revered, adored, and sought after.
Sought after, wanted. Because Jesus said we can do everything He did and even greater works. We should see miracle signs and wonders all the time. And I'll be honest with you, we see them more and more often here. And it ain't us. It's just because we're like, okay, you want to do this? Let's do that. You want to do that? Let's do it. Yeah, that is the new wine. But there is fear in that in many churches because they don't know what God's going to do. Well, He's going to do something good. Like, you don't really have to be afraid. He's going to do something good because He always does something good. So how can you tell if you are old wine or new wine? If you're if you say out of your mouth, well, it worked that way, it'll work this way now. No, it won't. Or that's how the revival at so-and-so looked when I was a kid, or that's how it looked when I was in my 20s. So it should look the same way. It's not going to look the same way. The revival that is kicking off in America, the billion-soul harvest that's going to travel across the world, is going to look different than every other revival that's then Azusa Street, then Brownsville, then the Toronto Blessing, then the Healing Evangelist one of the 50s, or the Jesus Revolution. It's going to look totally different. And I believe, in fact, it'll be a culmination of all of the revivals, and it'll have a piece of every single one of them, but will look totally different.
I believe that too, because there was bits and pieces of amazing things, and the wisdom of God was definitely for that moment and for that time. And I think man got in the way and sullied the waters and just kind of petered out and fizzled out when it didn't really need to.
Right. And demonic spirits came and attacked.
Yeah. But, I truly believe that, when the Lord is stirring up in what we call revival, right? It can continually happen, but it's designed to start and pursue something outside of it once the quote-unquote main point of the revival subsided, right? So that means we carry it on. We're still seeking after His presence, and we're pursuing a revival atmosphere in ourselves of always going to the Father, always going to Him, always going to Him, seeking the presence of the Lord continually over and over and over again.
and over.
The revival is stirring those things up to bring them to the point where we can all operate with the same level of faith. And then the ecclesia, the local church, the congregation that may be part of that quote-unquote initial revival should be always involved in that to just help bring it.
Correct.
And let it stir it up and
trained up to have people in their homes throughout the week, trained up to break bread with people throughout the week, trained up to do those Bible studies throughout the week, trained up to do that, empowering leadership skill throughout the week, because it's not just a Sunday morning thing or a Friday night thing. Revival is a lifestyle that we can live, but we don't want it to die out. The Lord doesn't want it to die out. He's not just going to let evil continue to rise. He is going to show up and eclipse the evil, but we can be part of that, but we have to be willing to be inconvenienced, be willing to let go of our schedules, be willing to let go of the way that we've always done it. We always did it this way. And we're going to do things the new way. We're going to let people in our homes. We're going to welcome every single walk of life and empower them. If they walk in here with humility and servant-heartedness, you can bet they're going to be empowered.
How could you say something so controversial yet so true? It's the truth. That is the truth.
Because that's what Jesus did.
Amen. Well, was there anything else you wanted to get out before we close this podcast out for this week?
I would say, if you want to be part of what the Lord is doing on the earth today, if you want to be part of the revival, if you want to be used, if you want to know your assignment, if you want to be part of something significant and something great, lay yourself down daily, sometimes hourly, sometimes minute by minute. Lay yourself down. Don't allow yourself to be led and run by your feelings, because your feelings will sometimes lie to you. Lay yourself down, crucify your flesh, and get ready for something great.
I don't got anything else to add. That was rock solid, stellar. That was a great way to end the podcast. So that's exactly what we'll do. We'll see you guys next week for part 2 of this new series called Taste and See.
Yes.
Bye-bye.
See ya.
Thanks for listening. We know God will move in your life and your heart through this message. The Barn Church and Ministries exist to create environments where people encounter Christ and are empowered to advance the kingdom. You can visit our website at www.thebarn.church. And if you want to follow us on social media, you can look for us on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube at The Barn Ministries. Send us an email to podcast@thebarn.church, because we'd love to hear from you. And as always, if you'd like to visit us, our service times are Sundays at 10:10 a.m.